Welcome to What's Going On, the weekly podcast and videocast of First United Methodist Church in Yankton, South Dakota. Hi, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of What's Going On. I'm Pastor Katie here at First United Methodist Church in Yankton, South Dakota, and I'm glad that you have joined me today. So there are a few announcements that I'd like to start off the podcast with today because they're kind of big and kind of exciting, and I want you to know about them. So the first is that we will be returning to in-person worship this Sunday, January 3rd, 2021. I'm really excited to say 2021. I'm so excited. As I'm recording this, it still isn't the new year yet, but it's going to get here sooner than we think. And so I'm excited for the possibilities of the new year and for returning to in-person worship. Obviously, we're still going to be having our live stream available. We know that for many that is the best option right now, but we also know that for many they are anxious to return to in-person worship. So we're going to be doing that, but we're going to be keeping our 10 o'clock worship time. We're just going to do one service at 10 o'clock like we've been doing for the last month. It's going to be kind of a mixed style of worship. We're still looking for people to record music for us ahead of time. We're still not going to be doing live music, live singing yet. But we will be inviting people back into the sanctuary. Still need people to check in. We'll still need masks are mandatory, social distancing, all of those things. So we also need you to volunteer. If you're able to be here this Sunday to help with the check-in process as an usher, things like that, we would love to have you do that. You can go to our website under volunteer needs and sign up for that. Or you can just come and show up, and that would be great too. And so that's the first exciting piece of news, which I am so glad to be able to see some of you in worship again. That's going to be wonderful. But honestly, it sort of pales in comparison to my second piece of news that is super exciting, and that is we have hired a youth education coordinator. So we have hired someone to kind of oversee our youth ministry, and I couldn't be more pleased. So Tiffany Bestie, who is currently our children's ministry coordinator, is going to be taking on the youth ministry as well. She's still working at the middle school in technology and career explorations, and she's going to be doing this as well. And so that starts January 1st, and she's been volunteering with the youth this fall. Big thank you to Gina Brandt and Julie Moderager for kind of tag teaming and getting our youth program going this fall. They're still going to be super involved. It's just we're kind of shifting things around where Tiffany's going to be kind of the point person now. And we're just so pleased. We're so excited for this. And so if you see her around, make sure that you congratulate her on this new exciting opportunity. And I'm really grateful because she's amazing. She's clearly so invested in our church and has such a heart for God and for our children and youth. And so I just see nothing but good things coming through that development. And so that's, I think, for me, probably one of the most exciting things. I've just been so pleased with the way this church has, so many have stepped up and filled those roles, and as we waited to find the right person to take that on, and we truly believe that Tiffany is the right person, and so I'm very excited about that. So those are the two big pieces of announcements, and man, I just flew through those, but I have another thing that I want to talk about today, and that is this coming Sunday, we are going to be celebrating Epiphany. Epiphany is actually on January 6th, but this is the Sunday that's kind of closest to it. Well, yeah, and so we're going to be celebrating that. Epiphany is when we celebrate the wise men showing up to worship Jesus. And so the wise men following the star. And so usually we have a lot of themes around stars and light and following God's light, and so that's coming. So I want to share a little brief story about Epiphany in my own life. My first year as a pastor back in the Dakotas, at the time, Roy Caudill was the district superintendent. So right now we have Rebecca Treves as our district superintendent, and she was on the podcast this fall. But my first year in ministry back, Roy was the district superintendent, and he had a habit of doing an Epiphany party for the pastors in his district. I think it was kind of an alternative to a Christmas party, but it was always in January, and we sang songs and ate and had fun. And um, anyway, I was supposed to go with my senior pastor at the time. I was the associate in Mitchell, and that morning she woke up with the stomach flu, and so her and her husband weren't going to go, and it was my first time, and I was like, I don't want to go by myself. But I had just made this new friend named Jason, and so I called him and said, I know this is last minute, like the day of, and would you be willing to come with me to an Epiphany party? And he's like, I don't know what that is, and I'm supposed to work late tonight, but I'm gonna come. And so as I was driving to Sioux Falls, where the party was and where he lived, he finished up his work, and I picked him up at his house, and off we went to the party. We weren't even dating at this time. We were still just friends, but everyone assumed we were married, and it was so awkward and funny. But I tell you, that was the night that I started to think, man, this guy is pretty great, because he handled hanging out with a bunch of pastors and retired pastors for the night and at an Epiphany party that he didn't really understand, but he had a grand old time. And so Epiphany for me is one of those moments where I look back on and think that was my epiphany, that this guy was pretty great, and that maybe I wanted to date him after all. And then we dated and ended up getting married. And so just a fun little story about an epiphany in my own life on Epiphany. So one of the ways that we're going to celebrate Epiphany this year is through a practice that has kind of become popular in the last few years, and I was introduced to it a couple of years ago through a Lutheran pastor in the town that I served in prior to coming here to Yankton. And it's this practice called Star Words, not Star Wars. There's plenty of Star Wars going on in the world right now. I'm talking about Star Words. And what this is that for during worship, we're going to have a bunch of stars, and they have words printed on them. So I picked one up that's been cut out already, and this word is abundance. So every star has a different word, and we'll figure out the best way to disseminate the stars so that you feel safe in having one. But anyway, you'll get a star. You'll receive a star in some way. If you come through for drive-through communion this week, we'll have stars available for you to take then. And then that is your word for the year. So last year when I did this, the word that I got was contentment, which I thought, what am I supposed to do with this word? And I thought of it in two ways. I thought of what are the things that I'm not content with that I need to be? And then what are the things that I am content with that I shouldn't be? And I will say, as I reflect on 2020, it's been a year of feeling not content about much. And maybe, as I reflect, what it was God trying to prepare me for with that word, to be content with the time I have with my family, to be content with the people that I do get to see and that I do get to love, to be content with kind of the upheaval that was in my life maybe, and then what are the things not to be content with? What are the things to keep striving for? And so, these words are an opportunity for us to reflect, an opportunity for us to kind of be open to what God might be revealing to us. So I want to share another story. A woman received the word prayer as her star word for the year. And through the first half of the year, she had multiple things happen in her life with people around her, being in the hospital, with things that were happening. And she just said, I just kept turning to prayer because I knew that was what God was calling me to. That was my star word. And every time that she would go through something like this, she would call me and say, Pastor Katie, this star word really is my word for the year. Prayer is really what is guiding me through. And because I had this as a star word, because this star was in a place where I could see it, I was reminded again and again that God is calling me into prayer during these times. And so I really do hope that these star words can be an opportunity for you to be open to what God is doing, to meditate on what God might be trying to tell you. And it might not make sense right away. And it might be over the course of the year that this word will start to you'll start to live into it in ways that maybe you didn't expect, in ways that God might be answering prayers that you didn't know. And so I'll put this star back because abundance is a good one. So I'm sure that probably one of you would want that one. So I'll make sure that I put that back. But the idea behind it is, The wise men followed this star. They recognized that the star was something of God. They recognized that it had importance, and they followed it. They uprooted their life, and they allowed this upheaval to happen so that they could go and worship, so that they could go and be witnesses to what God was doing. And so we have that same idea of recognizing when God is active, recognizing when God is putting something in your life or on your heart to do, and then being willing to be upheaved by it, being willing to go, being willing to have your life be a little messy and to not go as anticipated. And we've all dealt with that this year. So let us not get so entrenched in what we think needs to happen and allow God to tell us what can happen. And I'm just so convinced that God is on the move and that good things are being planted and starting to take root and to grow into something new. I think God is doing something new. You'll see in the newsletter that'll be coming out this month that that's kind of the meditation that was on my heart was, the prophet Isaiah said that God said, "Behold, I am doing something new. Like, can't you see it?" And I think that that's what's happening, that God has been kind of clearing some things out this last year, and that's a painful process. It's a painful process to prune trees, and it's a painful process to kind of clear out kind of the clutter and the mess and the dead things that we hold on to. But in doing that, it makes room for something new. It makes room for God to really flex and to grow and to show us what is next and what beauty is coming. And so don't be so quick to hang on to all the stuff that had happened. Let us take this opportunity where in 2020 we kind of had to clear out some things. And let God decide what's going to be, what's going to grow, what's going to be, what's going to live, what's going to bear fruit moving forward. Because God is doing something, and it is great, and it is wonderful, and I've been catching glimpses of it, and it makes me excited. It makes me really excited. I'm not going to say that 2020 was the easiest year of my life, because we all know that that's not true. And it's been a challenge to come to a new church during a pandemic and the things that we've had to do this year. And I know that, but I want to say that even in the midst of all of that, God has been so faithful, and that God has been revealing things in ways that I never imagined possible. But you have to stick with it, and you have to trust that whatever you're going through, God is with you, and that God, if we allow God to guide us, He's going to lead us to places we never thought possible. That's what the wise men did. They allowed God to guide them, and it led them to the Christ child that they didn't fully understand, but they knew that this was important. They knew that this child was different. They knew that this was royalty in a way that they'd never experienced before. And they only knew it because they were open to what God was showing them. So I want you to be open to what God is showing you for 2021. I want you to be open to where the church is going to go. Don't hold on necessarily to where we have been, but let us trust that where we are going is going to be reaching people for Jesus Christ. It's going to be transforming lives. It's going to be changing the status quo. It's going to be blessing people in ways that we never thought possible. It's going to make God's kingdom manifest here in Yankton, South Dakota. It's going to change hearts and minds. That's where we're going. And I want you to be a part of it. And I want you to allow God to show you the way. And maybe one of the ways that God will do that this year is through a star word. And so if you come to worship on Sunday here in the church, 10 o'clock, you can get a star word. If you come through for drive-through communion after worship, if you're not ready to be in worship yet, you can get a star. If you are someone who's not quite ready yet to be in worship with other people, you preferred the online worship, but you'd like a star, you can stop by the church during the week and pick one up. You can call us and we'll draw a star for you and let you know and maybe set that aside for you, or we can even get it mailed out to you. I think we can handle doing something like that. But I want as many of you as possible to have a star this year, to have a word that you can meditate on, that you can reflect on, that you can open your heart to what God is doing. This is for children, this is for adults, this is for everybody. I think it would be a great way with children to talk about how God can use different things in order to speak to us. And so you can start talking about what that word means for them, what that word means maybe in general. They might not know. I don't think my kids know what the word abundance means, but we could talk about it, talk about, okay, what are the things that you already have so much of in your life, to be grateful for those things. So it's, again, just a way to talk about faith and to bring that into your daily conversations. Talk about it with your partner, with your husband, with your wife. Maybe it becomes a part of your devotions. All right, your star word is this, how did that make sense or not make sense this week? Maybe where's God trying to speak to you? Again, using that language of God moments. And I love how so many of you have kind of really latched on to that language. And I think it's so helpful for opening our eyes to what God is doing, and looking back on your life and saying, where are those moments that God really showed up, or how did God use me, or how did God use someone else to bless me in my life, or to help guide me to where I needed to be, or course correct, or whatever that is. I think it's important for us to be able to recognize how God has been active, because then we can trust that God continues to be active. The more that you see God at work in your life, the more you will see God at work in your life, because it's not that God works more when we see it. It's because God has been working in your life this whole time. It's just whether we're paying attention to it or not. And so the more you can train yourself to see where God is active, the more you will see it. I liken it to like when you buy a new car. A few years ago, we bought a Nissan Altima, and it was the first time I had really been invested in buying a Nissan Altima. My family doesn't drive Nissans. We're Ford people. You can either say, hey, great, or hold it against me. I drive a GMC now, so I'm not super loyal, but I remember after we bought that, noticing how many Nissan Altimas there were around. Now, does that mean that all of a sudden everyone else bought a Nissan Altima? No, it means that I was starting to pay attention. Like, oh, there's a lot of these cars. A lot of people drive this car. Oh, that's interesting. I never noticed that before. They were there the whole time. I just didn't notice it. It's the same. God is working this whole time. It's whether or not we notice it. It's whether or not we are looking for it. And so that's my hope for you. That's the point of the Star Words, is it's another avenue for you to be paying attention, asking the questions of, what is God trying to reveal to me? What is God trying to speak to me? How can I continue to grow in my relationship and my discipleship? I encourage you to continue to reach out if you want to be a part of a Bible study. We have one happening Sunday afternoons at 1:30. Love for you to be a part of that. We're going to be going through, hold on, let me grab it. Well, this is an older version. This is the one from this year, but it's called Disciplines. It's a daily book of devotions, and it follows the lectionary, which, unless I'm doing a series, I will preach lectionary. I'm going to be preaching lectionary all through January, actually, so if you want to order one of these from the upper room, I think you can find it on Amazon as well. You can follow along with where I'm going with preaching, and this is oftentimes my personal, what I use for my devotions, because I really like it. But that's another opportunity for you, again, to allow God to speak to you. That's my hope. That's my prayer. So maybe the year of 2021 can be the year of awareness. That's what I'm gonna say it. It's the year of awareness, being aware of God, being aware of God's presence, being aware of God's calling, being aware of where God is leading us, so that, because unless we are aware, we cannot go where God desires us to go. We cannot be who God desires us to be. The first step is awareness. The first step is opening our eyes, opening our hearts to what God would want us to see, and what God would want us to know, and what God would want us to feel. And so that is my prayer for you, for anyone who's listening today, watching. This will be my last podcast of 2020. Next time I come to you on the podcast, it'll be in the new year. I'm so excited. I know that you are as well. And so I just pray that you have a wonderful New Year's and that I'll see you soon. God bless. Thank you for joining us for this episode of What's Going On, a video and audio podcast of First United Methodist Church in Yankton, South Dakota. You can join us for worship Sundays at 10 a.m., either online at www.firstumcyankton.org or in person with our safety protocols in place. We do require mask and social distancing. We hope to see you in worship. God bless.